Hello, listeners. We are back in the studio after a bit of a hiatus. It's Jackie McGriff, your host on today's podcast episode, where we're diving into the film The 6888. Now, before we get into today's episode, we want to remind folks that you can listen to previous episodes on Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also learn more about our films on our website at ourvoicesproject.com. If you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, you can email me at info@ourvoicesproject.com. And please note that while we welcome all, we prioritize hearing from Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks, especially since this podcast is about highlighting the films telling authentic and multifaceted stories of Black, Brown, and Native peoples. Now, let's introduce our guests. In the studio today, we have Bryan and Tam Little. Bryan Little is a producer and founder of DREAMINCOLOR International Creator Sessions, a monthly virtual gathering that connects Black, Brown, and people of color entertainment professionals to global opportunities through networking, showcasing, peer connection, and professional development. Welcome to the podcast, Bryan.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And Tam Little is an award winning filmmaker, conference speaker, and passionate storyteller dedicated to uplifting the voices of women and people of color in film. She is the director and producer of Move, a powerful documentary centered on the tragic mass shooting at a Boys and Girls Club in Rochester, New York. The film explores not only the heartbreaking loss of innocent young men, but also the resilience of a community that chose to respond with action, healing, and hope. Through Move, Tam had the honor of learning about the lives of the boys who were taken too soon and building relationships with their mothers. The documentary goes beyond tragedy. It highlights grassroots movements that emerged in the wake of the violence, including the motorcycle club Bikes Up, Guns Down, youth led initiatives like teen empowerment, and community building efforts such as Kick the Violence Kickball, and many more local agencies committed to change. The film has been screened in high schools, universities, and organizations across the country working to end violence and uplift youth. Tam is also the co author of an Amazon best selling book co written with her husband, Bryan. Together, they, of course, again, are the founders and hosts of Dream in Color International. A proud graduate of Rochester Institute of Technology, Tam holds a master's degree in public administration. She and Bryan are dedicated to building a vibrant, empowered community, one story at a time. Tam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Right, so now on to today's film. The 6888 is a film based on a true story about a battalion of 855 Black women who joined the war efforts set during World War II to address a 3-year male backlog. Despite discrimination and war-torn conditions, they sort over 17 million pieces of mail ahead of schedule. The film is written and directed by Tyler Perry. So, if you haven't watched the film already, you can watch it on Netflix now. So we encourage you to watch it and then come back to listen to our podcast. But from here on out, we are discussing the film in depth. So spoilers ahead. And as always, you have been warned. All right. Now, as far as this film, okay, so I watched it last night in prep for the podcast and everything. And so it is fresh. So I want to know, and I'll start with you, Tam. What were your initial thoughts about the film when you first watch it, and then what immediately comes to mind?
I think as a woman of color, it felt very familiar to me.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like this is my story as well. I could tell from just meeting all of the characters. I could see a piece of me in all of the characters, especially Miss Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just, they really they really gave her such a hard time, but she really pushed through all of the challenges that she had encountered. And that's something that I feel as a woman of color, that's our life, that's our story. Being placed in a position where it looks as though we have this leadership position,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, can we really do it?
Mm-hmm.
And having to prove ourselves. So that really resonated with me.
Yeah, I really did feel like it was. I was watching, I was like, man, I also want to just ask, like, other, like, my fellow Black women, like, what does this evoke for you? Do you feel as though do you feel seen in watching this? I mean, on this podcast we talk about representation in cinema, and so that really, for me, like you were saying, it resonated with me as well. Like, there are parts that I'm just like, oh, like I seriously feel this because this is what I'm having to go through, and I know other Black women are having to go through as well. Bryan, for you, same thing. Initial thoughts about the film, and what immediately came to mind for you after watching.
Well, my initial reaction to the film, again, this is one of those films that reminds me I don't read enough books because
Yeah.
because I've never heard this story before. Um, and to be honest with you, as a Marine veteran myself, I love fight or flight movies,
Hmm.
military movies, and they could have took, uh, they could have said, you know what, we're not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We we're above that,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to go and do what we signed up to do, and that wasn't to count male. But this is one of those movies I feel like if Tyler Perry never made the film,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have ever been, brought to the screen. I,
Mm.
I just believe that he wrote it in 2 weeks. So it
Two
was,
weeks.
yeah,
Oh,
it
I
was
did not know that.
definitely a passion for him to
Wow.
bring this story forward. As an African American male, again, when I seen Major Adams and the others that were around her, I related, again from a military perspective, but also saying, you know what, they were the right people for the job,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and just seeing the power in what they were doing. I, I know I'm being a little bit long winded, but I got to tell you this story real quick.
Sure.
Just being in Marine Corps boot camp, I remember how important it was to get a piece of mail, and I was just in boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't in war, wasn't on the front line or any of that. But to get mail from the outside world where they worked to keep you separated from that world in training,
Mm-hmm.
it was like a breath of fresh air. And I remember feeling deflated
Mm-hmm.
when, other recruits were getting their mail and I didn't get a piece, and I just felt so disconnected from the world.
Mm.
So that really stood out to me for this story.
So, thinking about your answer in particular, Bryan, when, let's see, and I don't know if I've necessarily seen this criticism, but if you ever got the question of, oh, but it's just like it's a story about male, like why is that so important? What would be your retort to that then?
Well, mail is communication. You know what I mean? And when you have someone that is cut off from civilization
Mm-hmm.
and in a basically a fish out of water
Mm-hmm.
type situation, they're in a war. You
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of young men who are in war,
Mm-hmm.
18, 19, first time out of the country,
Yeah.
away from their family, in a situation they don't know if they're going to make it back. They want to have some sense of matter. Mel says,
Yes.
I matter.
Right.
You took the time, especially back then. It's not like just writing an
Right.
email.
Right. Right.
It's someone took the time to write this letter, get a stamp for it,
Mm-hmm.
go to the post office back in World War II,
Mm-hmm.
and get that letter sent off
Right.
to those folks. So to answer your question, I think when we really look at what that is,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just a piece of mail, it's communication. It's a tether back to the real world for them.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I would not be the one asking that question because I'm like, watch the movie. Like you'll see that you'll answer the question for you. So Tam, going back to what you were saying about it really resonating with you, it's like, really just on a deep personal level. Two themes while I was watching the film, that really kept coming back for me, um, were these ideas of dignity and decorum. So when the women first arrive at their station, they immediately make it their own. It really needs a lot of fixing up where they are. And so they have a mail room, they have a bedroom, and then even make a beauty parlor. At the same time, you can also see the amount of, so that's dignity. And then we were talking about decorum. At the same time, you see the amount of restraint, and resolve that they when they are met with so much racism and sexism and any instance in where they're other people are trying to strip them, right, of their dignity. um what do you think about the contrast between those two things, both dignity and decorum?
I think that was the essence of who they were. And I think their upbringing and I'm sure their family structure really um, honed in on the importance of having decorum, not letting people see you sweat. I think
Mhm.
I think that is a mantra of a lot of people of colors families. Never let them see you sweat. You're always going to have to make do
Mhm.
with the small amount of support or resources that you have.
Mhm.
And so that even goes back way back in slave times. That's why you have soul food, because they would get scraps of food. So they're like,
Mhm.
listen, we may be getting scraps. We are going to make this such a beautiful meal. We're going to make this so amazing.
Mhm.
And so I think that is definitely the theme of how a lot of people of color, especially African Americans, think. So I think they were used to that.
Mhm.
And so they're saying, okay, we're going to make this essentially house a home, but this barracks a home, a
Mhm.
place where we can really focus on the job.
Mhm.
And so this is how we're going to be able to do it. We're going to have to make sure that we're looking great, we're feeling great, we
Yes.
have that community. Because once they walked into this building,
Right.
it was in such disarray.
Yes. Right. Right. Right.
um, you know, and they really made it their own. They made it a beautiful sleeping quarters. They
Mhm.
were able to make a beauty parlor because
Yes.
you gotta, your hair
You
needs to look
need
really
your
great.
hair needs to look good.
Yes, absolutely. But, in the armed forces, you have to make sure that you are very tight and
Yes.
sharp.
Yeah.
And so they understood that. And they were always very, even in the midst of being disrespected by not being given the proper salute,
Mhm.
or not being chosen to go on the front line because they were ready.
Mhm.
She really tried to plead her case, but she said it in a very dignified way. And when I'm not sure if it's the general or the major, whomever it was, and he's like,
General.
that's it.
Mhm.
And she just stopped. She didn't go further. She understood, rank and file. She understood
Mhm.
that he was the head, but at the same time, she stood her ground and she kept going, and that she was that squeaky oil, the
Mhm.
squeaky wheel that got the oil. And so I really love the fact that she would not just roll over and say, well, this is what he thinks. And she's like, no, I can do this. I can
Mhm.
do this.
Yeah.
And, having as Eleanor Roosevelt come in and really be the catalyst for this thing, I think it was like just so ordained, so it's just so amazing. But I think those women, they were the epitome of dignity and decorum.
Yeah, for me, like those two themes, because it's all, I mean, it's all throughout. I mean, there's many, but there's the the two that really the two themes that really struck out to me, of course, are those two things of dignity and decorum. And in this, I mean, in this film, they're fighting multiple battles, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even though they're not fighting, it's, fighting to be seen, fighting to be heard, fighting to be believed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that they are capable, that they are intelligent, that they can do this job. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, also seemingly with like an impossible. I mean, it's a seemingly impossible feat. It's also something that they're only given like 6 months to do, and with millions and millions of mail.
Right.
And also too, like there's even little things within that. I mean, it's also, you know, the soldiers constantly moving, and so trying to figure out where they are, and
Mm-hmm.
having not having all of the information. In your own life, in your own life, like where do you? I know I'm going like a little bit off, like, but like, where do you see that? Like, especially when, I mean, not just to having to like do tasks or get through, any sort of adversity, especially with just coming up against so many things, but then also like in your own lives, like having to meet injustice with restraint.
Right. I think it's always understanding that, and I think sometimes you have to just get out of your head
Mhm.
sometimes.
Mhm. Mhm.
and say, and just really focus on, okay, what am I really good at?
Mm-hmm.
And working hard towards it, and not saying I'm a woman or I'm a
Mm-hmm.
woman of color. It does play a big part of it, but I think you can't get to a point where it's constantly something that worries you,
Mm-hmm.
or it's constantly bothering you,
Mm-hmm.
because you can feel it. You
Mm-hmm.
can
Yeah.
feel when someone is does not respect you,
Mm-hmm.
or feel that you could do the same job or even better than your counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where that restraint comes from, where I don't have to um, argue or
Mm-hmm.
fuss or debate.
Mm-hmm.
My work is going to show who I am.
Mm-hmm.
My work is going to show forth the dignity that I have, the brain power, the collective thought, the experience, the education
Yes.
that I have. So it's like, I can show you better than I can actually go out and say, well, this is who I am. And no, I'm going to show you by the work that I do and the work that I produce, and you'll see it.
Yeah.
You'll see it. That's the fight. That's
Yeah.
that's how you wield the sword, letting folks know based on the results that you provide
Mm-hmm.
who you are.
Yeah. What about you, Bryan?
Could you ask a question again?
Yes, absolutely. So, as far as in your own lives, do you see this? When we're talking about again dignity and decorum, um, and having to meet any sort of hardship or injustice with restraint. Is there anywhere like in your life, or like a maybe an example, or just in general, like where you see this? You're having to meet that injustice with restraint.
All right. So I thought about this question, um, and I have to go back to the movie again,
Mm-hmm.
and what these women in
Mm-hmm.
the military had to face.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was World War II when this was happening, but I can remember even in the 90s, women still facing
Mm-hmm.
some of what they actually had to go through when it comes to things such as hairstyle or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. But I realized that, you know, they faced relentless racism. I've seen racism,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking 40, 50 years
Yeah,
later.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? But notably from people like General Hart, which was, who was his name? What was his name? Dean Norris.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah. So, but their response was always not responding to that negative energy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I found myself even now, and in years past, having to have that same type of drive. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's some things that you just can't respond to. And I'll give you a perfect example. And again, I can only really speak from my experience, even in being in the military. And
Mm-hmm.
I know what it felt like to be called, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
name that my mother didn't give me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
by someone who doesn't look like me,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm actually roommates with
Mm.
in the barracks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's, this person, they had their what they call that flag,
Confederate.
their Confederate flag on the wall. So imagine going to sleep with someone really good friends, but when things got hot, they got hot. You know what I mean? But just having that restraint. And I remember one time when this person called me this name, I remember ended up in front of our command, in front of our staff sergeant,
Mm.
and staff sergeant asked me. He said, "How would you like to proceed with this?" Because I outranked him by one strike, which isn't much, but
Mm.
I remember outranking him, and I remember consciously saying to myself, I'm not going to respond to that. I'm
Mm.
going to be bigger than that.
Mm.
I didn't even know how to do that, but I just pulled on something from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that the restraint isn't passive. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. And I, again, I just realized that them being polished professionals, those women, um, receiving the same type of training.
Yeah.
They received the same type of training
Mm-hmm.
as everyone else had to receive. Um, and I believe that they had to kind of like pull from that
Mm-hmm.
when they face these tough situations. So I hope I answered your question.
No, yes, you did.
Okay.
Absolutely. You both did. You both did. Are there any instances, especially in today's society, where a situation could, let's see, I guess maybe the response isn't so much restraint, but where there are instances where that injustice needs to be met with confrontation. Do you see any instances like that?
I'm
You know,
gonna hand
either
that
one
over
of
to Tam.
you.
I think when it's when you're faced with definitely bodily harm,
Mhm.
absolutely, and where it I think where it gets so blatant where it has to be addressed.
Mhm.
I don't think every little thing has to be addressed, but I do think that sometimes people don't understand it's unconscious,
Mm.
and you have to say what needs to be said.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be in front of everyone,
Mhm.
but it can be, listen, this is what I'm thinking here.
Mhm.
Like, I had an instance where, in one particular job that I have, that the women kept calling me girl.
Mm.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, no, no, no. I'm thinking, okay, we need to nip this in the bud now,
Yes.
because, and that it wasn't the first time it happened. And so I would say, listen, that is a negative connotation
Mm.
in an African American community. I am not a girl.
Mhm.
And I would appreciate that you would not call me that.
Right.
And so I think what I did was I helped others.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, let me help you help them.
Right.
Right, right.
To let them know, don't call me a girl, because
Right.
I'm sure that they said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't mean it. She told me
Yeah.
not to call her a girl." So I did, I just wanted to make sure that, people
Mhm.
understood that.
Yeah.
So I think to stop it from escalating or allowing others to think it's
Right.
okay
Yeah.
to continue, you have to
Right.
say something.
Yeah.
And if you need to go to, a higher authority, to maybe help mediate, but I think you can handle it one on one
Mhm.
in that instance. But I think some
Yeah.
things absolutely need to be addressed,
Yeah.
because it was just, I was shocked.
Mm.
Like, what year is this?
Right.
I had to look at the calendar,
Right.
Yeah.
so yeah, some things absolutely need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, you like you're saying, direct confrontation,
Mhm.
you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think when there are social or institutional practices that cause harm,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Racism, sexism, discrimination, you
Mhm.
Mhm.
know, all these different things that happen, like workplace environments, you
Mhm.
know. Um, again, when what you're receiving is direct,
Mhm.
you, you
Right.
almost have to respond in
Right.
kind.
Right. Right. Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just a firm believer of that. You know, when you think about the Me Too movement, when you think about Black Lives Matter, all of
Mhm.
these different movements that have happened,
Mhm.
um, you know, yeah, I think it's just important to, you know, you don't have to be, you don't have to give it the way you're getting it, but
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
still have to give it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah. Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. 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 I think also too, just like thinking about my own answer to that question, because I'm not gonna ask a question that I can't answer myself.
Right.
um, but in thinking about that, I think also too, especially like bringing it back to the movie, but
Yeah.
certainly like today's society, and also like thinking about the movie as well, is it's also strategy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because of course, if any of them were to respond in kind,
Mhm.
it could mean not only danger for themselves but those around them.
Right.
So of course here, and like in this context in the film, we totally, as the audience, we understand why,
Mhm.
because we understand history and we understand,
Mhm.
right, the position that she's in, even with being someone who is high ranking, but also being a Black woman in that society, and specifically, like, yeah, it could mean trouble for her and trouble for her privates.
Right.
So yeah. And then
I,
even to, oh yeah, go ahead.
yeah, you know, I don't mean to cut you off,
Oh
but
yeah, no,
I
you're
just
good.
had a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
memory thought.
absolutely.
And one thing we got to understand
Mm-hmm.
is, in the military,
Mm-hmm.
there is no gray area when it comes to obedience.
Hmm.
There is no gray area for, you know, like if you have an officer who
Mhm.
outranks you,
Yeah.
I don't care what comes out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
You better be standing at attention and taking it.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So thinking about it from that perspective,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
wow. At the same time, I could see where someone would want to respond, but see,
Yeah.
I made a mistake of responding. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
But I made the mistake of responding when I should have kept my mouth shut, and it got me in trouble. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
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 You can't. They have like zero tolerance for.
Mm.
Well, nah.
Yeah. No.
Doesn't work in the military.
No, and I appreciate that context. This is being someone who is very much a civilian. There is a little bit of an understanding, especially when just like watching the film. But yeah, to also have that context really like brings it home. Okay, another huge theme, that is glaring at us, like from the beginning to the end, is just how Black women are regarded in society. Both because they are Black and also because they are women and not seen as intelligent enough or capable enough, of doing what is seemingly an impossible task in a very short period of time. What did that, and I know we touched on it a little bit already at the top of the episode, but what did that invoke for you, Tam, watching these women figuring out a system together, supporting one another, and being successful in their efficiency?
Oh, wow. I just love the collective thought. Everyone brought in their expertise. You had morticians, you had all types of individuals, farmers, and they brought in their different ways of seeing things and problem solving and critical thinking, and they got it done.
Yes.
And I was just like, this seemed like such an impossible task. And I was just so proud of them. And what I loved is that, this what really resonated with me and it really stuck out to me, is that when they got the job done, they were walking through the train station. They were just like, I did my thing. I got it done. And they weren't looking for accolades.
Right.
They were not looking for accolades. I think the accolades were, we got this done despite the fact that you thought that we couldn't do it.
Right.
And so to have those other soldiers, the soldiers recognize and, really say, hey, are you the,
688,
the 688? And they're like, oh, they're just looking around and they got the applause. And I think that they felt recognized then. So that was just so amazing to me.
Yeah. I mean, when are Black women not capable? I mean, I'm just saying. I'm like, let's just put that out there.
Right.
When do we not do it? Yes. I just remember being like, yeah, I'm not at all surprised that they got that amount of 17 million. 17 million pieces of mail. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And in 6 months, and I don't know if there are any, again, math aficionados. I mean, I am a math nerd, but I'm not about to figure it out right now. But yeah, it's like, again, there's not a whole lot that they're given, right? And then of course it's war. So lots of things are unpredictable. You never know where, folks end up and everything. And it's just like to get through all of that. And at some point, I think there was also like, they were saying that, there was some mice that like got like chewed through things.
Right.
There's just like so many things that they're facing. And yet, as you said, each of them is bringing their own abilities, their own strengths, to the table. It was just incredible to watch.
And this is a math note from the producer. So 17 million divided by 90 days, 189,000 per day. That is a staggering number.
Well, and then there's how many women, like, because that's 800 and hold on, I'm just like trying to think of like the individual, like, I mean, of course, everyone's going at like a different pace. But if we're talking about like 855 women, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just having our producer also figure that out, because it's just like to put it into context. Yeah. First of all, that's a lot of mail a day.
221.
See,
Wow.
Yeah.
So divided
Wow.
by 800, you said 855?
yeah,
Yeah, so 221 per day
221
per person.
per person
Mm.
per day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, come to think about it, there's like the entire population of Tokyo, Japan, handing you a piece of mail. Not to mention, like you were
Yeah.
saying earlier about the mice eating through it.
Yes.
Excuse me. And we have to look at what they had to do
Mhm.
in order to identify, that was eaten through
Yes.
perfume smells,
Right.
dog ears.
Nicknames.
Yep.
Nicknames.
You know.
Exactly. And also repeated names.
Yes.
It's like, okay, yeah,
Mm.
we have like, and I forget what the actual name was, but like going through like 100 John Smiths
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to
Oh.
figure out which John Smith goes where, like,
Right.
and is this before, like, we're talking in like during World War II, right? So
Mhm.
like technology is where it's at, like back then. And so like, even just like doing that, like, right, like on a computer is like hard enough, but then like
Yeah.
actually having to like use context clues, having
Right.
to open mail, right, to kind of read and figure out, okay, they're
Mhm.
referring to this. Yeah, like it
Right.
just
Without damaging it.
without
further.
damaging it
Yeah.
further
Yeah.
as well. Like,
I'm sure people wasn't feeling too good.
yeah.
Probably it was a bit cold. Listen, I would tell you, I can only imagine they were cold at times. They were hungry. They were trying to figure out, why are we here?
Yes.
Is this even going to work?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and some of them were like, "I wanted to fight. Like, I
Mhm.
wanted to fight. I came
Right.
here to fight Hitler."
Yeah.
And to be rerouted to like another, to another assignment, and again, like because it wasn't regarded as something that is important,
Mhm.
right? It's something. Well, even we give to the women, but not the black women, because the black women, they're even less than, right? Like in their eyes.
Mhm.
And then for them to go through this task with all of that, like all of that,
Right.
and still and finish it like before they had 6 months, 90 days, that's 3 months. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so half the time, half the time is
Right.
it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any,
That was
any other
incredible.
thoughts to like that? Because it really just, really just sat there and was like,
Yeah.
17 million pieces of
Yeah,
mail in 90
yeah.
days is crazy.
And just think of those pieces of mail being family, being people.
Yes.
And I'm just going to go as far as saying, of course they had, their training, but I think they helped win the war because they connected families, they connected letters, they connected people, but also morale. When you're in, like Bryan was saying, you're in another country and you're seeing people die around you.
No mail, no morale, right? Was like
Yeah.
the saying in the film.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, when you're in a situation like that, you need to be connected with your family, people who love you, people who care, who are concerned about you.
Yes.
And they were able to connect thousands and hundreds of thousands of people together. So I'm thinking, like, what would have happened had they not done this? What would have happened? You had that mother sitting outside of the White House looking, trying to find her sons. They had not heard from them. She's concerned. She doesn't know if they've been killed, but they helped that mother.
Yeah. Yes.
And she didn't have to look like them, but they understood the assignment. Listen,
Right.
we have to make sure that these parents and people that love the men and women men who are fighting this war, we have to make sure that they get this mail so that they understand that, we're cheering for them. We care about you. You can do this. We're looking forward to you coming home.
Yes.
And that gave them the hope, because I think they were delivering hope.
Yes.
They were delivering hope.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they gave hope to countless people that probably didn't know who. And do you think they would have cared? They would not have cared at
No,
all what
no.
color they were. And so I think these are women of hope. They delivered hope, and yeah, I'm just so astounded by just the depths of this film. It had so many facets and variables and meanings, and it was just like awe-inspiring for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think Tyler Perry, he did a wonderful job on the film. However, I do believe that there were some more unpacking he could have done with it.
Mm.
And just to piggyback off of what Tam was saying, um, I have to imagine that these soldiers, they know what it feels like not to get mail.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? They went
Mhm.
through training, they went through boot camp.
Yeah.
I'm sure they were waiting for a piece of mail themselves.
Right.
And so they operated out of empathy, I think,
Mhm.
as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all the conversation that didn't end up on screen, what happened behind the scenes.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
even in the actors themselves, what did they talk about?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, you have these soldiers who are receiving this mail,
Mhm.
but they probably had a sense of abandonment or
Yes.
feeling like we have no idea what's going on back home.
Right.
You know, and not just in their own home, but in America.
Mm-hmm.
It connected them, you know, to America. And when we talk about morale, it's like, you know, that piece of mail didn't just connect them to their own personal family, but it connected them to why they signed up in the first place.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes. Absolutely. No, that is. I actually want to get into more of that, because you're both filmmakers, and so when of course you're watching this just as, you know, movie fans, right? And you're taking all of it in, but then I also like want to think through some of like the more, I mean, it's still also storyline and like maybe some of the technical things as well. But yeah, when you're talking about, you know, wishing that Tyler Perry would have dove more, dove more into, um, you know, many other like different aspects of the film. So what you're saying is, like, just to clarify, so what you're saying is, you know, had he, you know, dove more into like what those soldiers were going through, not getting messages, because we saw a little bit too of like what families were going through, right? And not hearing from them. What about the soldiers themselves as well? So was there anything that you wish Tyler Perry would have done more of in this film?
Yeah, I mean, do you want to take that?
Go ahead.
Excuse me. I could see him dedicating, you know, more time to developing the individual characters within the battalion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's a director that bought an army base. So I'm sure he took plenty of time to talk to, you know, technical advisors, people. You know, obviously I don't want to spoil it, but
no, this is a spoiler special. They gotta watch. You gotta watch. Yes,
the people that he was making the movie about, I'm sure he spoke to them and got firsthand knowledge from them. But you can only make a movie so long, and you can only spend so much money.
True.
And it's Tyler Perry. He wrote it in 2 weeks. I mean, let's give him a break.
I mean, normally I don't give Tyler Perry a break, but that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, I could go listen. Okay, the TED Talk that I could create. This was like, this is the thing. It's like when Bryan mentioned, "Oh, hey, I would love to talk about the 6888," and I'm like, the Tyler Perry. God. Oh, but then what I had heard was like, it was like, oh no, this is actually one of the better made films. I'm like, all right. And this is like someone who's like opinion, you know, I trust. You know, I'm like, okay, I'll watch the film. We'll see. Otherwise, you're gonna hear a lot from me. But yes, people know me are like, don't talk to her about Tyler Perry. You're gonna get a whole.
I almost didn't watch it.
Oh my God!
If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't watch it.
See, exactly. See, you get what I'm. Yeah, you're picking up what I'm putting down, because I just. Well, that's why I was like. I would love to know, you know, if there is anything like, because it's a well done film. I think though, like for me, I think what I would have liked to see, like I definitely would have liked to see more of that. I also wanted like to dive a little bit deeper into who Chastity was.
Yes.
Because she's this woman. I mean, you see a little bit of it in the film where she's breaking down like some of that wall because she's got to be strength, like to the rest of these women, for the rest of these women. She's got to be the example. It's a lot of weight. And I want to know what were her motivations. Going to the war. Obviously she, wants to serve her country. She wants to do all this. She was born in America. She wants to fight for the country that she was born in. And I'm just wondering also too, like what was her motivations? What makes her? And not to say that it has to really go through like a I guess like a whole deep dive, like a whole subplot, because I mean, of course, yes, you can only make a film so long. But I would have liked to see that, as well as, a little bit more development of the other characters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like with General Hart, played by Dean Norris. I honestly kind of looked at him as a bit cartoonish.
Yes. Thank you.
I thought
that was too. I was watching and I'm going, dude, what is this accent right now? Like, I'm like, it felt like, I'm like, okay, I don't know every single Southern dialect.
Right.
I don't know every single, like, every drawl. But, like, that one in particular, I was like, where are you from? And, like, or where are you supposed to be from? Because this doesn't sound like it was not typical. Like,
right.
It just doesn't sound like a Southern accent that I've heard before.
Yeah.
But then it also too felt like it felt more cartoonish. His whole role. I don't know.
Well, see, that comes from the directing.
Yes.
He's a great actor. And he's played in some great films.
Oh yeah. Absolutely agreed.
But you have a director that, I mean, even when he plays his characters, he got that funny, where do you come from? Are you from Atlanta? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's directing this actor, and he's trying to pull a performance out of him.
Yes.
And it just, I think it just served as, okay, he's just part of the story.
Yeah.
He's the opposition. He's the antagonist. Even though, to be fair to him, to be fair to the actor, on General Hart, I kind of see where he really believed, he just wasn't brave enough to say, I believe in these people. That's how I looked at him. He just wasn't brave enough because of the surrounding circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. Just to go back on.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
No, you're all good. This is what this is all about. This is a whole conversation about the filmmaking aspect and everything. When we're talking about direction, is there? All right, let's see. Let me go back. Do you think that there could have been another director? Like, do you think that Tyler Perry was the director to do this, or do you think that there could have? Did you see another director doing this story justice? I'll phrase it that way.
Go ahead. You want to?
I when we were discussing it, I thought Ryan Coogler would have made
That's
a great
exactly what I
director.
thought of.
Yeah,
That's
that's
exactly.
He was the very first person that I thought would do an amazing job, and I think he would place so many layers on the characters. Not that the characters didn't have a lot of layers, but I think he would have brought them out a little bit more and put a little bit more pizzazz on it and put a different twist of creativity on it. He's so amazing. So I thought he was the very first person that I thought of who could do a great job.
Yeah. We're like so right here because I was like thinking about this and I'm like, I would love to see like Ryan Coogler's version of this, Denzel Washington's version of this.
Yes.
Well, what to you do you think? So you had said a little bit about Ryan Coogler. Bryan, would you have the same answer or would you have a different answer?
I would have a different answer.
Yeah.
And I would say Ava DuVernay.
The queen.
And the reason
Yes.
being because her movies make you cry.
Yes.
And I don't tear up, and I might get a drop or something. But when she made Selma,
Oh my
I
god.
normally don't watch movies like that, but I said, you know what? Let me just check this movie out. And I tell you, by the end of that movie,
It's a
ooh, it's like something just
lot.
dropped in my heart. Like
A
when they were
lot.
marching and coming around that corner.
Yes.
Just think about it, just give me goosebumps. So I think she would do amazing in a film like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the end of that film. So Selma, I saw it at the Little Theater. Shout out, Little
Oh.
Theater. I saw that, and I was with my mom, and it wasn't like a super small crowd, but it also wasn't huge. But we're all sitting there, and the credits are rolling, and none of us moved. We're all just kind of frozen. And then at some point, like it's like 5 minutes go by, my mom's like, "Can we just get up, or are we supposed to?" And I'm like, "Ma'am, we just remember what you just saw. Like this is like, yeah, because we all just didn't. It's like letting everything wash over you and like processing
Yeah.
everything. Like I don't know if I did that with this film. Of course, like you stay a little bit because there's
Yeah.
like after credits, like
Right.
information and everything. And I'm always encouraged by that too, because then I know that there are people like myself who will go and like research, that afterwards. But yeah, I mean, Ryan Coogler was definitely at the top of my list. I believe Ava can do anything. So also Ava as well. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, thinking about Denzel Washington too, because I'm thinking about The Great Debaters.
Yes.
That's also another incredible
That's great.
film. But yeah, for sure.
What about Spike Lee?
Oh gosh, Spike Lee.
I love Spike Lee, but
I love
I don't
Spike Lee,
think
but
he
I
could've
don't know
touched
if this was
Nah,
the film for
this
him.
would have been a
No.
movie
Because
for
I'm
him.
thinking, like immediately off the top, I'm thinking Black Klansman.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's such,
Shit,
which is
partner.
also. Thanks, Chris. So like, oh man, no, yeah, like thinking of I think there's a contrast, even though they're based on true events. I think of two very different stories, right? You're talking about like with Black Klansman, for instance, you're talking about Ron Stallworth. You also have Malcolm X, with Spike Lee, and so it feels like they're two very different stories. And I forget who it was who did Judas and the Black Messiah. I forget who that director is. But yeah, like these are all different stories, and so I think they all need different directors. And so it's not that like Tyler Perry, as much as I love to dunk on that man.
So that director is Shaka King.
Okay. Yeah. So who did a great job with that film. But not to say that Tyler Perry didn't do a great job with this one, because I was pleasantly surprised. It was well done. I just as far as like in my mind's eye who I would have seen, for that role, it could definitely go to a few others as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. So because our Voices Project, we are all about, of course, visual storytelling, but also about truth telling. And especially when you are talking about true events, stories that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten in a classroom or would have been lost to time had not someone had the dedication. We're seeing a lot of these films come out in recent years. Stories like Hidden Figures, 42, Black Klansman, as we just mentioned, Chevalier, Just Mercy, Judas and the Black Messiah, Harriet, and Marshall. I think was it the late Chadwick Boseman who played like two of those roles. This next part is a two-part question. Do you think that stories like these are given the proper platforms? So streaming versus theatrical releases, and also what do you think about the marketing that also goes into these films?
All right. So regarding the platform question, you said it's a two-part question, right?
Well, I mean, it's really there are three parts because we don't believe in asking small questions here
Right.
at Representation in Cinema. Yes.
So I think there's an important distinction that's happening with with historical films,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about this earlier. Hidden Figures, I loved, but I didn't go to the movie theater to watch
Mm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 42, another movie I saw
Mm-hmm.
on streaming. I didn't go to the movies to see that, and I think they both have their place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The culture is different now. Things are different.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not going to movie theaters to be in a big dark cavern watching a film on a river of white on a screen.
Mm.
They'd rather stay at home. And so I don't think it's a dig against whether it's in the theater
Mm-hmm.
versus streaming. But I can say the one thing that you are losing
Mm-hmm.
by not having a theatrical run
Yeah.
is community.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where before you get an opportunity to see
Yeah.
others that are coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, I know me personally,
Mm-hmm.
and I know both of you being African American, have seen, you know, our fellow Americans who would come into a movie theater, and you kind of ask the question, like, oh, wow, they're interested in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
for sure.
So I think you miss that coming together as a community
Mm-hmm.
when you don't have it in the theater. But I also understand the business of it,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just keep it real, okay? Because the business of Hollywood, they already do not believe,
Right.
to some degree, that black people
Mm-hmm.
are marketable anyways.
Yeah.
As far as worldwide distribution, things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a safe bet. I don't think a movie like the 6888,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you never heard of the story,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's Tyler Perry telling, we're used to Tyler Perry making us laugh and making
Right.
us,
Yeah.
have a good time. That wouldn't work in the theaters. You're not going to see that. I didn't even know Tyler Perry made it until she told me about it. I'm serious. I'm just,
no, I know it's funny.
I didn't
It's
even
so
know.
funny. Yeah.
But that's just my thought around it. And I just believe that it's better served on the streaming because it's constantly in your face.
Mhm.
Everyone around the world
Mhm.
watches Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to see that come up on the screen, fade out, it's going to come back another 5 minutes from now.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, you know what? That may have given you time to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let me watch that.
Yeah.
Versus, oh man, I got to get out and go to a movie theaters, and I'm already counting up, like you were saying about the spreadsheet and everything. I'm counting up how much it's going to cost in my head. I got 3 kids. I would really like for them to see this movie,
Mm.
but it just ain't worth it to me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I do think they, folks in Hollywood don't put as much of that marketing budget
Mhm.
behind predominantly, cast film. So
Mhm.
definitely I think there needs to be a bit more of that, that big budget pushed
Oh, yeah.
behind it, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
think you need both, like he was saying. I think you need both the streaming
Mhm.
and that theatrical piece as well.
Yeah. As far as like why I pose that question too is because it's always interesting to me, like being in conversation, with folks who are kind of like in both camps. Whereas like,
Mhm.
it's convenient, right, to have it on a streaming service, and you may have, you have a family, and it's not. I mean, it's not feasible, right, to like go out to the movies, and like spend all of this money, to sit in the theater and everything.
Mhm.
But then also too, on the other side of that, like there's so much, like there's so much that is within streaming. And so of
Right.
course, if you're somebody who, now of course Tyler Perry is a big name, but if you're like, I'm thinking in terms of like, if you have a story that you really need to tell and you're not as well known, and you're putting your film on a streaming service, what's to say that, and maybe people like eventually watch it, but then like with having like a wide theatrical release,
Right.
like, to me at least, and this is just me, but like to me, I'm like, okay, that's more of an opportunity to have more folks seeing it and buying into what the story is.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Bryan, like about, when you go to the movies, it's about that community. I remember like sitting there after having just seen like a film like okay, two films because they were both nuts. One, The Menu, and then the other one, Annihilation. And I remember sitting there in the theater, and there's, especially for The Menu, there's a family that's like sitting right next to me and a couple of other friends, and they're like, yeah, we have no idea what are the themes, like what were we supposed to take from that. And so we're getting into all this whole conversation with total strangers in the theater. The other instance is like Annihilation. I'm sitting there, and we were working at Pittsford Cinema when it was still a thing. At the time, sitting there, and we were texting our manager like, what did this thing out?
And it's such a visual spectacle too.
Yeah.
Like some of those movies, and that's the thing, like, even though this isn't as much of a visual spectacle, it still deserves that kind of presence, right? It's a story that, every story is bigger when you see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a story where some of those emotions get big when you see it on the screen in a very
Yeah.
different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point because what we fail to realize is it takes a ton of money
Yes.
to do any theatrical release.
Yep.
That's why you have some movies, you see some certain movie stars, and they'll still say limited release because they're like, we got to try this out. Jake Gyllenhaal, we love you, but we got to try this out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a business.
Yes.
And, if you have all these different theaters around the world, China has to buy into it.
Yeah.
Russia has to buy into it. And if these sales aren't being made, or they feel like, well, we don't really care in this market about.
Oh, yeah. That was I remember Viola Davis talking about that with The Woman King. And they did make budget, like they did end up making more than what it cost, but at the same time it was such an uphill battle, like everything. And even someone as big as Viola Davis still having to like fight through, because you have to make it I remember this saying, she was like, you have to make it marketable to a story about a black women led, it's a black women led film, and it has to appeal to white men, white women, and black men. You have to get it through all of those people first, and then you're also trying to sell it to get it through all of those people, audiences as well. So this of it is really, while I do understand it, it's just such it's a lot.
But even still, Steven Spielberg would have a problem getting certain movies made. You know what I mean?
Which one? Like The Color Purple?
No, well, The Color Purple is a whole nother podcast. But he had movies like War Horse and some of his passion projects that he wanted to get made, and it was questioned. You can go all the way back to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Great movie, but we don't know you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it has to jump around and now we look at it now and say, wow, how did you even miss that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But we got to think about when it comes to people spending money versus putting butts in seats.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's why I'm constantly telling folks, I'm like, build community, especially Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. I'm like, if you're trying to build, well, actually, I won't even go that far. Like, it's why I'm seeing like constantly these actors who are having a very rough time, well-known actors who are having a very rough time getting roles, and they're creating their own production companies. Yep. Yes. For those who are listening, Bryan just raised his hand. Yes. Both of them, all of us really. But like, yes, building your own production companies and building audience and community around those production companies who really resonate with the stories, really support what's going on, and the storytelling within those films. And I'm looking at all these actors. I'm like, I'm going to support every single one of you. Again, like with Viola Davis in The Woman King, or Dev Patel with The Monkey Man. You're talking about like Jordan Peele, like someone like Jordan Peele, like, you know, and then also not only having his production company, but then also being able to pour into these other actors, you know, getting into directing, getting into producing and everything like that. So yeah, that's where I get encouraged. Are there any other stories that you'd like to see turned into a narrative feature?
There is a woman that I actually just discovered. Her name is Mary Fields, and she was the very first African American mail carrier in the Wild West. So she was this gun-toting mail deliverer in the Wild West. You know, gun-toting, cigar smoking.
Wait, did she have a nickname? Is this Stagecoach Mary?
I'm not sure if it's, but I'm not sure, but she was something to behold.
Okay.
Apparently, you know, fighting wolves and Indians and bandits, and I was like, she sounds very interesting, and I think that'd be a great movie because I think it appeals to folks. I love Wild West movies.
I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yeah, I love Wild West movies, and you know, just to see this woman like the sojourner truth for mail and to, you know, just getting this mail to people all over the West Coast and Montana and things like that. So, you know, I love Yellowstone. I love all things Yellowstone, and I would have loved to see just the scenery and her character and how she, you know, because she was a slave. She was a slave. And I guess she started living in a convent, got kicked out of the convent. And so it was, I'm just like so excited to see if it's, you know, I'd be excited to see if someone, you know, took that film on.
I mean, I'd love to see it as a Tam Little directed film, for real.
Oh, wow.
Claim it, Tam.
Okay.
Hey,
All right.
You might as well.
Why not?
What about you, Bryan?
Actually, there's a few people that I would like to see a movie of. I actually made a list in my head. One is being Oscar Micheaux, which I think is actually in development with Tyler Perry playing Oscar Micheaux. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Very interesting.
Wow.
You know, Stevie Wonder. I would like to see a biopic for Stevie Wonder, a real biopic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I'm surprised.
as we're naming these people, I'm like, well, nobody's done it yet.
Get on.
Okay, Jackie, let's do it. Let's go. John Singleton, another one, and Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
Really?
I would love to see a story of Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
Yeah. I just like Oprah Winfrey for her story.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's parts that she ain't telling.
Right. So, you should get into the nitty gritty.
So
like, we're going to talk about it.
Let's talk about the real, you know.
The real Oprah.
The real Oprah, right.
Yeah. Oh wait, actually, before I give my answer, did you have any others? Or
no, that was it.
Yeah, okay. Because I've had to do a story on her, or it was for like, so a few years ago actually, I was a guest blogger talking about, it was for Black History Month, and they were doing 28 Black figures in 28 days. And so I was I don't know if I was given, I think I just picked her. Mary Bowser, the first Black spy. She has there's just so many things. She whenever Black history comes around, or just when we're just talking about history in general, and I'm like, but y'all don't know about Mary Bowser. So she was an enslaved woman. The family who owned her and her family, once the parents, because they had a daughter, once the parents died, the daughter freed all of them, and then sent Mary up to school up north, and then after she was done with school, ended up coming back down to work for the daughter, and they were both abolitionists, and because the daughter was very much an abolitionist, and so what would happen is what they ended up doing was working as spies for the Union.
Wow.
And so the thing was, Mary had a photographic memory.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember the daughter's name, but she would host Confederate like generals at the house, right? Playing very, very much into like the Southern Belle, like this, the person who was for the Confederate. And so as they're having meetings, Mary would pretend to be an enslaved person.
Oh, wow.
And so as she's serving like tea or whatever it is that they're having, because they thought she assumed that she was illiterate, would have all of their plans out.
Oh, wow.
And so Mary would go in, memorize all the plans,
Wow.
and then feed it back to the Union.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm like, y'all need to make this film right now.
Wow.
I'm so ready. Yes. And then they found out what was happening, and she ended up escaping. There really isn't much more about what happened, but she also tried to burn a state house. Before she left, before she fled, she was like, I'm gonna do something. That's what she like. She tried to, yes, Mary. I was like, you know what, girl? Yes, absolutely. Yes, set it ablaze, girl. But it was, I remember reading that and going, how is this not a movie yet?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've also had documentaries about the Negro baseball leagues, but I would also love something around that, and then also too like the solidarity between races, because what I remember learning at the Baseball Hall of Fame was the fact that there would be, so that you'd have all of these black baseball players, and then when it was an off season, they would go down to like Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Dominican, and they would play with them, and then the same would happen. And so not only do I love that, just because like I love learning about the Negro leagues, but then also too the solidarity also too between between races as well. So I think that's beautiful. But yeah, well, so we come to the portion of the podcast where you get to brag about yourselves, as you should. So do you have any upcoming projects, events? Do you want to do any shout outs, talk about Dream in Color, or anything else that's happening?
Okay, I appreciate that. Is this live?
Well,
Okay.
I'm live on Instagram right now.
Okay. Well,
It'll be out in the next few weeks.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
Well, we have Dream in Color International Creator Session, and matter of fact, we have a meeting tomorrow. So for the month of April, we usually have it every second Thursday of the month, and it's from 7 to 8 p.m. And tomorrow we'll be featuring a Netflix showrunner and also a woman of color. Producer and director, Ms. April Speaks. So we're going to be having that. And so if you're interested in future meetings or anything like that, you can send an email to events@dreamincolorfilms.com. But I'm also working on my first feature film, which I did not intend to do. It was a totally different kind of project. But I'm in the stages right now of creating a proof of concept for a feature film here in Rochester.
Nice.
And we are currently in the writing stages. I do have a very good friend of mine who's also the co-producer and writer, and Native American. Name is Rob Jones. He just listens to what I'm saying. He takes it and he just turns it into something. But I want to make sure I pronounce this right. He's a Haudenosaunee. Well, storyteller. He's a native screenwriter and creator of the Onondaga Nation 5D Light Comics, where he does comics that's focusing on diverse, a lot of diversity in entertainment.
Nice.
But yeah, so him and I are, we're back and forth on the writing stage, and it's something that we want to have cameras up for the proof of concept around September sometime.
Nice.
So that's what I'm working on.
Right.
Cool. Tam, how about you?
Yeah, I think we're just, from my standpoint, we're building Dream in Color. We want to actually make it into more of a membership platform.
Nice.
And we've had people from all over the globe, from Africa to Australia to name a few more.
Oh man, so UK, Vancouver, Alaska, Canada, Tokyo,
Yeah.
some other place in
Yeah.
Japan. I don't even remember the name.
Yeah.
Turkey, Saudi
Yes.
Arabia, all
Yeah.
over the place. They're
Yeah.
everywhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we got like 80 people showing up.
absolutely we just want to bring people together. We want to
Yeah.
bring people together. So in a more formalized way. Yeah. So that's my goal.
Amazing. Thank you both for sharing. For our listeners, we'll be putting all of this information in the show notes. So please go and look there for everything that Bryan and Tam are doing. Any final thoughts as far as the film, projects, anything that we've talked about tonight? Tam, I'll have you go first.
Well, I just really appreciate what you and your producer are doing, really highlighting these films of people of color and talking about the films, because I think this is another avenue to get the word out, marketing,
Oh yeah.
and really getting people interested in what's happening. So I just want to applaud you and thank you. And
Thank you.
I'm just so honored to be here today. And, I'm so excited.
Honored to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I reflect that. I think it's just wonderful. You know what I mean? To be a part of what you're doing,
Mhm.
and just being able to get out a little bit of what we're feeling as far as this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that someone that's listening right now have made a decision
Mm-hmm.
to go and actually take a look at the film and
Yeah.
learn something that they didn't know 10 minutes ago.
Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll have to have you back obviously for like more films. I know, Bryan, that you had expressed talking about the Spider-Verse
yeah.
franchise. It was just announced. Please, dear God, let it be the actual date, because it's beyond the Spider-Verse has moved. That date has moved so many times. But I'm
Mhm.
also hoping that, like all the animators, everyone working on the film has enough time, because it was very rushed, I guess, the last one.
Mhm.
So I'm like, listen, as long as they're not being worked to death, I can wait. But also, please, June 2027.
Oh,
Let that be June 4th, 2027 is when
Wow.
we're supposed to be getting it.
All right.
Wow.
So we'll have to have you back on to talk about Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, and then eventually Beyond the Spider-Verse, and then other films as well. So thank y'all once again for coming onto the podcast. It's really been an awesome conversation,
Thank
as
you.
I knew it would be. Y'all are amazing. To our
Thank you.
listeners, absolutely. To our listeners, thank you so much for your support of Our Voices Project and our Representation in Cinema podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky, and at www.ourvoicesproject.com for more information about what we do. And also on our website, you can sign up for our newsletter to be the first to get notifications about podcast episodes and new projects. You can also listen to this episode and others under Representation in Cinema on any of the platforms listed on our website, or of course on Spotify. And you can, like I said, for the podcast in particular, ourvoicesproject.com/podcast, if you would rather go there to check out all of our episodes. This has been Jackie McGriff, your host for this episode of Representation in Cinema of Our Voices Project. And as always, thank you again for listening.